War has always been a deadly game of strategy, but some ancient battle tactics were so strange that they belong in the Hall of Fame for absurdity. From using adorable animals as shields to outlandishly failed war elephants, ancient generals weren't afraid to get creative, often to hilarious and disastrous results. We're counting down our picks for the top 10 bizarre ancient battle tactics. Number 10, Cats as Shields, Battle of Pelusium, 525 BC. Let's start with one of the most perfectly bizarre tactics in history. In 525 BC, the Persian king Cambyses II set his sights on Egypt, but he knew he'd face fierce resistance. So what's a conquering king to do? Use cats. Egyptians revered cats as sacred animals, often associating them with their goddess Bastet. Cambyses, recognizing this devotion, instructed his soldiers to carry cats as shields and release them onto the battlefield. The Egyptian soldiers, fearing harm to their sacred animals, hesitated to fight back, leading to the Persian victory at the Battle of Pelusium. Cambyses even went a step further and had his troops paint images of Bastet on their shields to further confuse the Egyptians. Now, using psychological warfare is one thing, but when your strategy involves weaponizing house pets, you're playing 4D chess on a whole new level. Number 9, Hannibal's Flaming Oxen, 217 BC. In the ancient world, Hannibal of Carthage was known as one of the most brilliant military minds, but even geniuses can come up with ideas that are a little out there. After crossing the Alps and terrorizing Rome, Hannibal found himself trapped in a narrow valley by a Roman army. Unable to escape through conventional means, Hannibal turned to an unlikely savior: oxen. At night, Hannibal had 2,000 oxen tied with bundles of sticks and branches, which were then set on fire. The terrified animals bolted up the hillsides, creating the illusion of a massive retreat by Hannibal's forces. The Romans, fearing an ambush, scrambled to respond, and in the confusion, Hannibal's army slipped away unscathed. Who knew setting a bunch of cows on fire would lead to one of the most daring escapes in military history? Number 8, War Pigs versus War Elephants, 275 BC. Elephants were the tanks of ancient warfare, massive, intimidating, and capable of causing chaos on the battlefield. But how do you stop a charging war elephant? Well, according to the Romans, you use pigs. Yes, pigs. During the Battle of Megara in 275 BC, the Romans discovered that elephants, for all their might, were terrified of pigs. The Roman army exploited this fear by setting pigs on fire and releasing them toward the enemy's elephants. The shrieking, flaming pigs panicked the elephants, causing them to stampede back through their own lines. It was a chaotic scene, but it worked. Pigs 1, elephants 0. Number 7, the Sacred Band of Thebes, 4th century BC. What's better than a band of elite soldiers? How about one made up entirely of pairs of lovers? The Sacred Band of Thebes, an elite military unit from ancient Greece, was composed of 150 pairs of male lovers. The idea was that men would fight more fiercely to protect their partners, and the emotional bond would make them an unstoppable force. The strategy worked for a time. The Sacred Band was instrumental in defeating the Spartans at the Battle of Leuctra in 371 BC, shattering their invincible reputation. However, the band met its tragic end at the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BC, when they were wiped out by the forces of Philip II of Macedon and his son, a young Alexander the Great. Still, their unique fighting style and emotional ties made them a legend in ancient military history. Number 6, The Roman Testudo formation, 1st century BC. When it comes to tactical creativity, the Romans were ahead of their time. The Testudo formation, also known as the tortoise formation, involved Roman soldiers lining up in a square or rectangle, locking their shields together to create an impenetrable shell. Soldiers in the front held their shields in front, while those in the middle held theirs overhead, forming a defensive barrier against enemy arrows and projectiles. This tactic was highly effective in siege warfare, protecting Roman soldiers as they advanced toward enemy fortifications. However, while it was practical in certain situations, it wasn't without its weaknesses. The formation could be slow and cumbersome, making it vulnerable to fast, nimble enemies. Despite that, the Testudo formation became one of the most iconic military strategies of the Roman Empire. Number 5. The Siege of Tyre's Floating Causeway, 332 BC. When Alexander the Great laid siege to the island city of Tyre, he was faced with a problem. Tyre was surrounded by water, and his army didn't have a navy. But Alexander wasn't one to let a little thing like geography stand in his way. So he ordered his men to build a floating causeway to bridge the gap between the mainland and the city's walls. The construction was a logistical nightmare, and the Tyrians responded by attacking the workers from the sea. However, Alexander's persistence paid off. After several months, his troops finally reached the walls of Tyre, and the city fell. This tactic, while effective, was undoubtedly one of the most elaborate and time-consuming siege strategies of the ancient world. Number 4. Spartan Crypte, 5th century BC. Spartans were known for their rigorous military training and unyielding discipline, but their secret police force, known as the Crypte, took things to a whole new level of bizarre. The Crypte was a rite of passage for young Spartan men who were sent out at night to roam the countryside and kill helots, Spartan slaves, who they deemed to be rebellious or threatening. While the Crypte wasn't a conventional battlefield tactic, it was an integral part of Spartan control over their subjugated population. The fear and intimidation instilled by the Crypte helped prevent uprisings and ensured that the helots remained in line. In a way, it was an early form of psychological warfare. Number 3, Pyrrhus and his war elephants, 279 BC. War elephants make another appearance on our list, but this time they were on the losing side. King Pyrrhus of Epirus was one of the first military leaders to use war elephants in Europe, famously employing them in battles against the Romans. Initially, the elephants were effective, trampling Roman soldiers and spreading panic. However, at the Battle of Beneventum in 275 BC, Pyrrhus's luck ran out. The Romans, having learned from their previous encounters, used flaming projectiles and loud noises to spook the elephants, causing them to rampage through Pyrrhus' own troops. It was a catastrophic failure and marked the beginning of the end for Pyrrhus's campaign in Italy. The term Pyrrhic victory, meaning a win that comes at too great a cost, is named after this unlucky king. Number 2, Battle of Salamis and the Wooden Walls, 480 BC. The Greeks were masters of unconventional tactics, and the Battle of Salamis is a prime example. Facing an overwhelming Persian navy, the Athenian general Themistocles devised a plan to lure the Persians into the narrow straits of Salamis, where their large ships would be at a disadvantage. Before the battle, a mysterious oracle had advised the Greeks to trust in their wooden walls, Many believed this referred to Athens' physical walls, but Themistocles interpreted it as a metaphor for their navy. He was right. The Greek triremes, with their speed and maneuverability, decimated the Persian fleet, securing a pivotal victory in the Greco-Persian Wars. It's a classic case of turning a disadvantage into an advantage. Number 1, Scythe Chariots, 4th century BC. Topping our list is the terrifying yet impractical Scythe Chariot. Used by various ancient civilizations, including the Persians and Celts, these chariots were fitted with long blades that jutted out from the wheels. The idea was simple: charge the enemy lines, and the blades would cut through infantry like a hot knife through butter. In theory, it sounds devastating, but in practice, Scythe chariots were difficult to control and often caused as much harm to their own forces as to the enemy. At the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BC, Alexander the Great easily countered the Persian Scythe chariots by opening gaps in his lines, allowing the chariots to pass through without causing any damage. While they looked menacing, Scythe chariots ultimately proved to be more of a novelty than an effective weapon of war. And there you have it, our list of the top 10 bizarre ancient battle tactics. Whether it was using sacred animals as shields or setting pigs on fire, ancient warfare was filled with strategies that ranged from ingenious to downright absurd. But hey, in the chaos of battle, sometimes you have to get creative. What's your favorite strange war tactic? Let us know in the comments below.